I watched him laugh at her worn shoes and calloused hands, throwing money at her feet like she was nothing. He had no idea who she really was. What happened next wiped that smug grin off his face so fast he didn't see it coming. Neither will you. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, hit that like button if you believe in karma and subscribe, because I bring you stories that will restore your faith in justice. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It was a Thursday evening at the Grand Meridian Hotel, one of those places where the chandeliers cost more than most people's houses, and the carpet is so plush, you feel guilty walking on it. The kind of place where wealth doesn't whisper, it screams. A charity gala was in full swing on the third floor, and the lobby buzzed with men in tuxedos and women dripping in diamonds, all pretending their donations were about helping people, rather than being seen helping people. I need you to picture this moment clearly, because everything that happened next hinged on a split second of judgment, the kind we all make without thinking. A young black woman sat in one of the lobby's leather armchairs, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone. Her name was Rochelle Patterson, and she wore a crisp navy blazer over a white blouse, her natural hair pulled back in a professional bun. She was waiting for a colleague, a business meeting that was running late. Nothing unusual, nothing that should have attracted any attention. But then Lawrence Whitmore made his entrance. Lawrence was the kind of man who believed the world existed to serve him. At 58, he'd built a real estate empire that stretched across the city. 47 buildings with his name on them. 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 Luxury condos and commercial properties that generated millions every month. He had the kind of wealth that makes people forget to say please and thank you, the kind that turns human beings into scenery. That night, he stumbled out of the gala elevators, champagne drunk and surrounded by 3 other wealthy men who laughed too loud at jokes that weren't funny. His eyes landed on Rochelle, and without breaking stride, he snapped his fingers, actually snapped them, like she was a dog. You there, bring my car around black Mercedes, license plate WHITMOR1, and be quick about it. Rochelle looked up slowly, her expression calm, but confused. I'm sorry, sir, I don't work here. Lawrence stopped walking. His friend stopped too, sensing entertainment. He turned fully toward her, and I wish you could have seen his face. That particular smile rich men get when they think someone's lying to them. Don't work here. He looked her up and down, his gaze lingering on her blazer, which wasn't designer, on her shoes, which were practical rather than expensive. Then what are you doing sitting in this lobby dressed like you're playing dress up? The air changed. You know that feeling when something shifts from awkward to ugly? When you realize you're watching something you can't unsee. That's what happened. Rochelle stood up, maintaining her composure in a way that made me respect her instantly. I'm waiting for a meeting, sir. I'm not hotel staff. A meeting? Lawrence drew out the words mockingly, turning to his friends. She's waiting for a meeting at the Grand Meridian. How ambitious. They laughed, and the sound echoed through the marble lobby. Other guests started to notice, started to watch. Some pulled out their phones. That's when Grace appeared. Grace Patterson had worked at the Grand Meridian for 20 years. She knew every corner of that hotel, had cleaned every suite, had watched countless guests come and go with their temporary wealth and permanent arrogance. At 52, her hands bore the evidence of 2 decades of hard labor, scrubbing, polishing, lifting. She wore her housekeeping uniform with quiet dignity, and when she saw what was happening to her daughter in that lobby, she moved fast. Sir, please. Grace's voice was steady, but you could hear the mother in it, the protector. That's my daughter. She really doesn't work here. Lawrence's eyes lit up like he'd just won the lottery. Your daughter? He looked between them, and his smile turned cruel. Oh, this is rich. This is perfect. He turned to his audience, because by now at least a dozen people were watching. The maid's daughter, sitting in our lobby, pretending she belongs here, pretending she has meetings. Grace stepped closer to Rochelle, and I watched something beautiful happen. Rochelle put her hand on her mother's arm, a silent communication that said, "I'm okay. Let him talk." But Lawrence wasn't done. Not even close. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, the kind made from leather that costs more than Grace's monthly rent. He extracted $100 bill with a flourish, held it up so everyone could see, and then, I still can't believe he did this, he dropped it at Grace's feet, let it flutter down like a leaf, like trash, like she was beneath him picking it up. "For raising a daughter who doesn't know her place," he announced. "Maybe use it to buy her some proper work clothes, the kind maids wear." His friends roared with laughter. Someone's phone camera flashed. Grace bent down slowly, picked up that bill with the same hands that had cleaned toilets to put her daughter through school, and folded it carefully into her pocket. Lawrence wasn't finished. He was on a roll now, performing for his crowd. "You know what your problem is?" He pointed at Grace, then at Rochelle. "People like you think that putting on a nice jacket means you belong in places like this. But we can always tell. We always know. I own 47 buildings in this city." 47. What do you own? A mop? A bucket? More laughter. More phones recording. More people watching this man destroy two women's dignity for entertainment. Rochelle's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "Come on, Mama, let's go." They walked toward the exit together, Grace's uniform and Rochelle's blazer, side by side. And Lawrence called after them, "That's right. Know when you don't belong." Then he strutted back into his gala, back to his people, back to his world where money meant you could treat people however you wanted. But here's what Lawrence didn't know. Here's what made everything that came next so beautifully, perfectly karmic. The next morning, Lawrence woke up in his penthouse apartment, the one that overlooked the entire downtown skyline, where he could literally look down on the city he believed he owned. He had a busy day ahead. The biggest day of his career, actually. The Riverside Project, a massive development that would add 3 more buildings to his empire, was going before the City Planning Commission that week. It was a formality, really. These things always were. You grease the right palms, smile at the right people, and the stamp of approval comes down like clockwork. His lawyer called that morning with a reminder. "Lawrence, the commission meeting is Friday. New chairperson. Very by the book from what I hear. We need to make sure all our documentation is perfect." Lawrence barely listened. "They're all the same," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Show up, present the proposal, answer a few pointless questions. Done. I've been doing this for 30 years. This city runs on my taxes. They'll approve whatever I want." What Lawrence didn't know, what he hadn't bothered to check because men like him don't worry about details, was that the new chairperson of the City Planning Commission had just been appointed 2 months ago. Young, brilliant, Harvard law educated, with a reputation for being absolutely incorruptible. The newspapers had covered it. The local news had done segments. But Lawrence didn't read newspapers unless his name was in them, didn't watch news unless it was about his buildings. Meanwhile, across town, Grace sat in the hotel break room with her co-workers. They'd all seen the video. By Friday morning, it had gone viral. Billionaire mocks Maid and her daughter at luxury hotel. Millions of views. Thousands of comments, calling Lawrence everything from a monster to a dinosaur who needed to go extinct. Grace's co-workers were furious on her behalf, but Grace herself seemed almost calm. "Are you okay?" her supervisor asked. "Because if you need time off after what that man did to you." Grace smiled, and it wasn't a bitter smile, it was knowing. "I'm fine, really. My daughter is amazing. And nothing that man said changes that." She paused, sipping her tea. "You know, I've been cleaning this hotel for 20 years. I've seen men like Lawrence Whitmore come and go. They think the world belongs to them, right up until the moment it doesn't." One of the younger housekeepers, Maria, leaned forward. "Grace, I have to ask, your daughter, Rochelle, what does she do? Because that man called her a liar, but the way she held herself." Grace's smile widened. Rochelle earned a full scholarship to Yale when she was 17, then Harvard Law. She worked for the Department of Urban Development in Washington, D.C. for 3 years, focusing on housing policy and urban planning. And 2 months ago, she accepted a position back home. Grace paused for effect. She's the new chairperson of the City Planning Commission. The break room went silent. Then Maria whispered, "Oh my God, does Lawrence Whitmore know?" "I don't think he bothers knowing about anyone but himself," Grace said, quietly. Friday arrived like a storm you can see coming but can't avoid. Lawrence showed up at City Hall, wearing a suit that cost $8,000, surrounded by his team of lawyers and consultants, all carrying briefcases full of glossy presentations about his Riverside project. He signed autographs in the hallway, actual autographs, like he was a celebrity. He took selfies with people who asked. He was in his element, the center of attention, the man who made things happen. The commission chamber was all dark wood and high ceilings, the kind of room designed to make you feel small. But Lawrence never felt small. He took his seat at the presenter's table, shuffled his papers, and waited for the formality to begin. The commission members filed in, one by one, taking their seats behind the long elevated desk. Lawrence didn't look at their faces. Why would he? Then the chairperson entered. She wore a black suit with a white blouse, her natural hair styled in a professional twist. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd earned every inch of her position. She took her seat at the center of the commission, and there was a nameplate in front of her, Dr. Rochelle Patterson, Chair. Lawrence looked up from his papers, his eyes focused. His brain processed what he was seeing. And I wish you could have seen his face in that moment. The way the color drained, the way his mouth opened slightly, the way his entire world tilted on its axis. He recognized her. Of course he recognized her. He'd mocked her 3 days ago, thrown money at her mother's feet, called her a pretender, and now she was about to decide the fate of his biggest project. Rochelle's expression remained perfectly neutral, perfectly professional. "Good morning. This hearing is now called to order. We're here to review the proposal for the Riverside project submitted by Whitmore Development Corporation." Her voice was clear, authoritative, nothing like the quiet woman in the hotel lobby. "Mr. Whitmore, you may present your proposal." Lawrence stammered, actually stammered. His lead lawyer had to nudge him. He stood up, and for the first time in his life, his confidence wavered. He started his presentation, the same one he'd given 100 times, about progress and development, and bringing prosperity to the waterfront. But every few sentences, his eyes would dart to Rochelle, looking for some sign of what was coming. She took notes, asked questions. "Mr. Whitmore, your environmental impact study indicates minimal disruption to the wetlands. Can you provide the raw data that supports this conclusion?" He fumbled for an answer. His environmental consultant stepped in, but Rochelle was ready. "According to the independent review we commissioned, your data appears to significantly underestimate the impact. Would you like to address this discrepancy?" It went on like that for 40 minutes. Every claim Lawrence made, Rochelle calmly dismantled, with facts, with documentation, with the kind of thorough preparation that comes from actually caring about your job. She asked about the 47 families who'd been displaced from his previous project on Lincoln Avenue. She asked about the building code violations that had been reported and mysteriously dismissed. She asked about the inspectors who'd suddenly retired after approving his questionable construction methods. Lawrence tried to bluster. "These are baseless accusations. You can't prove any of this." Rochelle looked at him for a long moment, and something passed between them. A recognition of exactly what this was. "Actually, Mr. Whitmore, I have documented proof of everything, including sworn testimony from 12 families you displaced without proper compensation, including building inspection reports that show structural violations in 3 of your properties, including financial records that suggest improper payments to city officials." She paused, all obtained through legal channels, I assure you. The room was so quiet, you could hear the air conditioning hum. Lawrence's lawyers whispered urgently to each other. One of them stood up, trying to deflect, trying to argue procedure. But Rochelle had done everything by the book. There was no escape hatch, no technicality to exploit. Then Lawrence made his final mistake. He stood up, his face red, his voice rising. Do you know who I am? I have been building this city for 30 years. I employ thousands of people. My developments have brought billions in revenue. You can't just, I know exactly who you are, Mr. Whitmore. Rochelle's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. The room went silent again. You're the man who threw money at my mother's feet 3 days ago, who mocked her decades of honest work, who assumed that because she cleans for a living, she and her daughter don't deserve basic respect. Lawrence's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Behind him, his lawyers looked like they wanted to disappear. One of the other commission members shifted uncomfortably. Everyone in the room understood what was happening, but they also understood that it didn't matter, because Rochelle kept talking, and her voice never wavered. But Mr. Whitmore, I want to be very clear about something. This decision is not personal. It cannot be personal. This commission makes decisions based on compliance with city codes, environmental regulations, public safety standards, and community impact. Your proposal fails to meet our standards in multiple critical areas. The viral video of your behavior toward my mother, that's for the court of public opinion to judge. This commission judges your work, not your character. She looked down at her notes, then back up at him. Though I'll note that character and work quality often align. The vote was unanimous. The Riverside project was denied. Additionally, the commission was opening a formal investigation into Lawrence's previous developments, with the possibility that some might need to be brought up to code or face closure. As the gavel came down, Lawrence Whitmore's empire began its collapse. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The video from the hotel had already gone viral, but now it exploded with context. Billionaire who mocked Maid loses empire to her daughter, ran on every news site. Lawrence's investors started pulling out. His board of directors called emergency meetings. Banks that had been eager to fund his projects suddenly wanted to review their relationships. The city's investigation uncovered more violations, more corner cutting, more families who'd been squeezed out of their homes to make room for his profits. Within 2 weeks, Lawrence Whitmore went from untouchable to toxic. 3 of his buildings were found to have serious structural issues. The lawsuits started piling up. His name, which he'd plastered on everything he built, became something his own company wanted to remove. But this story isn't really about Lawrence's fall. It's about what happened after. A week after the commission hearing, Rochelle visited her mother at the Grand Meridian. She found Grace in the same lobby where everything had started. Finishing her shift, they embraced right there, in front of the guests, and the gold elevators, and the expensive carpet. Grace pulled back to look at her daughter's face. "I'm so proud of you," Grace said. "But not because of what happened at that hearing. I've always been proud, from the moment you were born." Rochelle smiled, and there were tears in her eyes. "I know, Mama. That's why what he said never really touched us. Because I know what you sacrificed. I know what you gave up so I could have opportunities, and no amount of money he could throw at your feet would ever diminish that." They stood there for a moment, mother and daughter, in the exact spot where Lawrence had tried to humiliate them. But the humiliation hadn't stuck. It had bounced off their dignity like rain off glass. 6 months later, Rochelle's commission approved a new development for the Riverside location. Affordable housing, mixed-income apartments, community spaces. Many of the families that Lawrence had displaced received compensation and priority placement in the new buildings. The project was named the Grace Patterson Community Center, honoring a woman who'd spent 20 years cleaning a hotel and raising a daughter who changed the city. Lawrence Whitmore filed for bankruptcy. His empire sold off piece by piece. The last I heard, he was living in a modest apartment in the suburbs. And the irony wasn't lost on anyone that modest was exactly what he'd never learned to be. Grace retired comfortably on her pension, and the money Rochelle insisted on contributing. The Grand Meridian installed a plaque in the lobby, honoring her 2 decades of service. And every time someone walks past that plaque, they're reminded that dignity isn't about where you work or how much money you have. It's about how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. Because here's the truth that Lawrence learned too late. Everyone is important. The maid cleaning your hotel room, the woman sitting in the lobby waiting for a meeting, the people you dismiss because they don't fit your definition of success. They all matter. They all have stories. They all have power, even if you can't see it. Lawrence thought he owned the city because his name was on buildings. But Grace owned something much more valuable: the respect of everyone who knew her, and a daughter who'd learned that real power isn't the ability to hurt people, it's the ability to help them. Karma doesn't always come when we want it, but it always comes when we need it. Lawrence learned that respect has nothing to do with how much money you have, and everything to do with how you treat people. Grace raised her daughter to be powerful, not by putting others down, but by lifting herself up through hard work, education, and unwavering dignity. If this story moved you, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that prove dignity always wins in the end. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Rochelle's position. See you in the next one.